Welcome to Chess Thoughts, where we explore the emotions and experiences that shape us. I'm your host, and today we're reflecting on something often misunderstood: solitude. In a world that constantly pushes us to stay connected, to be available, to surround ourselves with people, solitude can feel like a strange or even uncomfortable concept. But what if solitude isn't something to fear, but something to embrace? What if, in being alone, we actually find something deeper, something essential about ourselves? Before we go any further, let's make an important distinction. Solitude is not the same as loneliness. Loneliness is the pain of being alone, a feeling of isolation or disconnection. Solitude, on the other hand, is the power of being alone, the ability to be content in your own presence. There's a beautiful quote by Paul Tillich. Loneliness expresses the pain of being alone, and solitude expresses the glory of being alone. This reminds us that solitude is not about the absence of others. It's about the presence of ourselves. So, why is solitude valuable? Why do so many great thinkers, writers, and artists actively seek it out? Clarity and self-reflection. When we step away from the noise of the world, social media, conversations, obligations, we give ourselves space to think, to reflect on who we are, what we want, and where we're going. Solitude allows us to process emotions, work through challenges, and gain clarity in ways that constant stimulation doesn't allow. Creativity and innovation. Some of the most brilliant ideas in history were born in solitude. Think of writers retreating into nature to craft their greatest works, scientists lost in thought before groundbreaking discoveries, or artists finding inspiration in silence. When we're alone, our minds wander freely, unshackled by distractions, opening the door to creativity. Emotional resilience. Solitude teaches us to be comfortable with ourselves. When we learn to enjoy our own company, we become less reliant on external validation. We build a stronger sense of self-worth, independent of how others perceive us. Mindfulness and inner peace. Solitude encourages stillness. It allows us to be fully present in the moment, to notice things we might otherwise overlook. The rustling of leaves, the rhythm of our breath, the quiet hum of life around us. In solitude, we can cultivate mindfulness, an awareness that grounds us in the here and now. If solitude has so many benefits, why do so many of us avoid it? Why does the idea of sitting alone in silence sometimes feel uncomfortable? Part of it is cultural. We live in a world that glorifies busyness. We're constantly told to do more, be more, share more. Being alone can feel like we're missing out like we're not being productive. But true productivity isn't just about doing, it's also about being. Then there's the fear of facing ourselves. When we're constantly surrounded by noise, we don't have to confront our thoughts, our fears, our uncertainties. But solitude removes the distractions, leaving us alone with our own minds. That could be uncomfortable, even scary, but it's also where growth happens. So, how do we shift our perspective on solitude? How do we stop fearing it and start welcoming it? Here are a few ways. Start small. If the idea of spending time alone feels overwhelming, start with short moments of solitude. A quiet morning walk, a few minutes of journaling, sitting alone with your thoughts before bed. Over time, you'll start to appreciate these moments rather than resist them. Disconnect to reconnect. Technology keeps us constantly plugged into the world, but solitude requires unplugging. Try a silent hour, where you turn off notifications, step away from screens, and simply exist. Read, meditate, or just sit in stillness. Engage in meaningful solitary activities. Not all alone time is the same. Scrolling through social media alone in your room isn't solitude, it's distraction. True solitude comes from activities that bring you inward. Writing, painting, hiking, listening to music, or simply sitting in nature. These are moments that nurture solitude. Reframe solitude as a gift. Instead of seeing solitude as isolation, see it as an opportunity. An opportunity to know yourself better, to grow, to create, to find peace. The more you frame solitude as something valuable, the more comfortable it will become. Throughout history, many of the world's greatest minds have spoken about the power of solitude. Henry David Thoreau sought solitude in the woods, writing Walden, a reflection on the beauty of simple, quiet living. Rainer Maria Rilke wrote that solitude is necessary for personal growth, encouraging people to love their solitude as a path to self-discovery. Buddhist monks practice solitude as a way to cultivate enlightenment, believing that true understanding comes from looking inward. These examples remind us that solitude isn't something to escape, it's something to embrace. It's in those quiet moments that we learn who we truly are. So here's something to think about. When was the last time you truly sat with yourself? No distractions, no phone, no background noise, just you. What did that feel like? And if the answer is, I don't remember, then maybe it's time to rediscover the power of solitude. Because in solitude, we don't just find quiet. We find clarity. We find creativity. We find ourselves. That's it for today's reflection. Thank you for spending this time with me. If you found this episode meaningful, share it with someone who might need it. And as always, keep reflecting, keep growing, and most importantly, keep living.